Okay, and today we're going to talk about dictatorship. This is another form of government, another type of government, and you might see this word in the GED social studies test. If you're not sure what it is, well, let me explain. Dictatorship is a form of government in which one person or a small group possesses absolute power without effective constitutional limitations. Okay, so it means you usually get one person, a political strongman or a general from an army, and they're very ambitious and they rise up through the ranks and they get to the top position in the country and they want to hold on to that position. Okay, and these are, I say, very ambitious, very ego-driven individuals who are not restrained. They're not held back by constitutional limitations. So they pretty much have the power to do whatever they want. Now, the term dictatorship comes from the Latin title, dictator. Okay, so that's what the word is directly from Latin. Which in the Roman Republic designated a temporary magistrate who was granted extraordinary powers in order to deal with a state crisis. Okay, so how the word was used in ancient Rome is a little bit different to how it's used in language today. In ancient Rome, it meant this dictator person. Okay, he got these extraordinary powers to deal with some kind of big problem, but the powers were temporary. Okay, they didn't last for that long. Modern dictators, though, more resemble tyrants. Okay, these are very negative individuals who use their power for very negative purposes, and there's usually a lot of greed, a lot of negativity, to say the least, surrounding their time in that position of power. Okay, so dictators usually resort to force or fraud to gain despotic political power. Okay, so dictators in the modern sense, they usually have very strong armies that protect them. They also use a culture of fear within their communities. If you've ever read George Orwell's book, 1984, this is a perfect example in literature of how a dictatorial political system works. Okay, and they also maintain this political power through the use of intimidation, means scaring people. Often they make people, like they talk about the disappearances, so people will disappear off the street, never to be seen again because they have a political view which is opposite to the dictator and his inner circle, let's say. They also use terror, so using things like the torture, again, unfair prison sentences. Also, the suppression of basic human rights. Okay, sorry, the camera's blocking that a bit. Suppression of basic human rights. So within a dictatorship, there'll be a complete lack of any kind of freedom. No freedom of speech. Maybe restricted freedom of movement. You'll be constantly in fear, even in fear of your family members or neighbours, telling the secret police about your views, and no one knows when they're going to disappear. No one knows when they're going to be taken away in a van and tortured in some dungeon at the bottom of a castle. No one really knows. Okay, so it's not a very pleasant idea of how to run society. Also, they may employ techniques of mass propaganda, right, to keep their support. So what is mass propaganda? Well, propaganda is when a government or an individual, they create information which is, let's say, bends the truth somewhat to make themselves seem, to kind of shed more of a positive light on who they are. Often this can be seen as like a what's called a cult of personality. So you can see that in Stalin's Russia, or in modern day North Korea, where you have what's called a cult of personality. It means you get pictures of this person everywhere. All schoolrooms will have pictures of this individual leader. The roads will have the pictures at the side. And people are just kind of, it's thumped into people's heads from a very young age that this is almost like a demigod. This is like almost like a figure of reverence that should be prayed to, never mind just supported as a leader. So yeah, propaganda is usually done through newspapers or the media in general, like through the internet these days, or the radio, magazines, pamphlets and all of that. And if propaganda is, as I said, heavy enough, strong enough, combined with all those elements I discussed before, you end up with a cult of personality, with this almost kind of demigod figure at the top of the country. Okay, so if you're looking for examples of this, let's say modern day North Korea, you could look for in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, there's many examples of this, such as Mussolini in Italy, General Franco in Spain. You have Tito, Hitler is probably the most famous one, Mao Zedong in China. You could even say in modern times, you could also have probably Putin's Russia. Africa as well. Africa is full of dictatorships even today. So is the Middle East, actually. Okay, so that's what dictatorship is, and a few examples for you. I hope this video is useful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.